Good day, everyone. Today, there are going to be five of us from the Sitefinity team, would like to share a bit of details about highlights of Sitefinity 12 and talk not only about what's new in the release, but also what's important, when it matters, and how you could use it. Sitefinity 12 was released early in May this year and is available to all customers with current maintenance. And it's also available for trials, both download and hosted, should any of you be interested. There is a lot on the agenda today, so we will try to be as efficient as possible as we want to leave enough time for question and answer at the end. First, I will do a very brief overview of Sitefinity 12 and then pass it to Jordan, who will cover updates related to MVC and Bootstrap. Also talk about the new UI for page creation and making UI extensions. After a brief demo of rule-based forms, we will dive into matters of Sitefinity speed and performance to cover new cache optimization options and geo-distributed deployment. We will then go into what's new with upgrades, as well as the new modular architecture and new packages of Sitefinity 12. Peter Filippov, our product manager of Sitefinity ecosystem and integrations, will cover the latest about Sitefinity Marketplace. And then, hopefully there will be enough time, we will get into Q&A. The big focus of Sitefinity 12 is highly efficient and highly productive site creation. So this serves well both web developers and content marketers. Much like version 11 featured big updates in content creation UI, this time we revamped the page management UI to have pretty much identical designs and workflows for both. In addition to that, by focusing on the MVC first approach, we have simplified page templates and drag and drop page creation to provide leaner widget libraries that are easier to use. We have also updated our content versioning to provide full revision control for media items, images, videos, and such, which gives you the ability to fully restore previous versions of pages on your site and all content items should that need arise. Finally, site sync is enhanced to support real-time synchronization between environments with automatic detection of dependencies, which is a very interesting feature available directly to the content editors. In the personalization area, we made a big step forward with rule-based forms, which I will talk through via a brief demo later. In Sitefinity 12, it's also much easier to configure data connectors to your various contact management systems, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, etc., as well as to hook up the forms to our own Sitefinity DEC. Finally, it's worth highlighting that this release puts together some very interesting performance improvements in Sitefinity, and all of the three will get covered in a bit more detail later on. Modular configuration, various clever options for cache warm-up, and details of multi-regional deployment. The full extent of these features and many more, as usual, is described on our What's New page on Sitefinity website, and with a bit more detail still in our published release notes. With that, let me turn this page and introduce Jordan Ilchev, who is our Senior Engineering Manager, working primarily on MVC technologies and the UI.
Thank you, Sergey. For me, as a developer, there is three main improvements in V12. The first being MVC and Bootstrap. The second being pages and new UI for them. I go to that in a bit. And the most important part is the content editor widget and the same content editor across both content items in news and dynamic modules and in the pages now. And the best part of that is the extensibility. And I will show you how easy it's now to extend all the backend functionality with the new admin app interface. But first with MVC and Bootstrap, for quite some time belief and champion the MVC first approach for Sitefinity because MVC widgets are much faster to develop, much easier to style, and very easy to make responsive and extend. And for because we know you need to have all at a glance, we create a special page. You see it on my screen. You can scan it right now. And with all the resources, why MVC is the way forward for you to develop your additional widgets for your customers and websites. Uh, with MVC and 12 release, we released Bootstrap 4. It's a major improvement in regards of accessibility and responsive design for pages, especially for this is the default template for MVC and hybrid. And it also brings a lot of technical improvements. It's much easier now to style thanks to the move from LESS to SAS technology. But for all of you that still use Bootstrap in their project, we'll keep updating the Bootstrap tree till the end of the year, and the GitHub repo will stay there if you still want to dive in and use that model. With the V12, the new UI is now for pages as well, and especially the many users' favorite content block. It's now features the same editor and can be both page management and editor can be extended with the same technology as a current UI. It's bring more consistent import of UI because we have now same simplified management for the pages that can be extended very easily with a few lines of JavaScript and HTML using same OData services under the hood for both creating and arranging and managing the pages. It's look exactly like the user interface for the dynamic models and the current content models, so your users will feel at home, especially those that are managers and editor. It's much easier to learn, and it also brings what you see, what you get editor. I will get to that in a bit too. Uh, it's very low learning curve for the end users, but it's a very easy for the developer as well because it's very easy to extend and add additional functionality for those special business cases your user want. It can be extended with Angular framework because that's what we use under the hood. We use the latest Angular technology, but you can use additional technologies as well, especially when you extended that backend. Pages. It's very fast and streamlined now to create a page with less data for users to input. And also there is a special reorder screen for frustration-less editing of the sitemap and for site structure. And my special favorite for this release is the content block. Now you see this new gorgeous what you see, what you get HTML editor with advanced content, uh, HTML code editor as well. You see, I have a few extensions added to this editor because they are on the top uh, right on the screen because they are very easy to add. And to show you how actually easy it is to add more extensibility to both editor or a page management grid or news management grid, I will show you how you can download, build, and deploy an extension to existing Sitefinity backend under the 5 minutes as I promised to Sergey. So here I have my Azure website. This is the same site that we use for hosted trials. It's called Quantum. And on About Us page, there is a content block that I want to improve functionality. Let's say we have a love for trademarks in our organization and our editors need to use them a lot. I can use a superscript, but it's not the natural one. I can go to this gorgeous editor we borrowed for Visual Studio Code and Microsoft called Monaco and write the proper trait HTML markup, and I will get the proper trademark. But what about uh, creating a special insert symbol button? You can do that. Go to our Sitefinity organization. The first repo is Sitefinity extension. You can read the overview or just go to the quick start for today, and you can clone the repo, check out your specific Sitefinity version because our extensions are forward compatible. Once developed, they will work with all consequent version, but I will choose the latest one, or you can directly download it as a zip file. You see, I actually using Mac for this demo, so that's how versatile our extensibility framework is. Here is the Visual Studio Code I mentioned, same editor you will get in Sitefinity as well, and I only need to extract the file, do a npm install like any JavaScript developer knows nowadays, and in few seconds I have all the tooling I need for my extension development. Here I need to find the main index for the extension bundle I will produce, and right now I will produce one extension module with one extension, so I will comment the rest of samples and of course imports and inclusion then as an ng model. Then here is our editor extender module that contains all the samples for extending the editor, and in its index file I will comment out the rest of the samples and we'll just leave insert symbol provider. This is the extension that will provide that button to insert a symbol, special symbol to my page. And the very important part, name your extension bundle very uh, carefully because you want to, once they build, you can use it for a lot of version and a lot of projects. So it used to have a good name so you can distinguish them. And I will do npm run build, and it will produce a neat bundle with all necessary file bundled together in the single JavaScript file here in the dist folder. You can see my new extension bundle is ready. So what I need to do is to distribute this to all my Sitefinity projects that need insert symbol functionality. Uh, let's say I want to go directly to my live instance. I don't recommend that. And drop the file in the admin app folder. You better check in this in your source control for the Sitefinity, not directly modifying the environment in Azure, but for now it's okay. I have another extension as you see right there that adds some additional functionality to my sample. I restart the web app, and when Azure redeploys my app and restarts in a couple of seconds, we will get uh, all my extension live on every editor in the backend. As you can see, I mentioned it, you can have multiple extensions at once, and we will bundle them together and, and load all them at once. We are warming up our site. This is something you have to do for all your production sites. Warm the models so users do not see the cogs spinning. And I go to my about page in the backend. And once it refreshes, I can go to my content block. Here it is. And voila, I have my insert symbol added to my toolbar, and I can pick the proper trademark symbol without needing to do anything else. With that, thank you, and back to Sergey.
Thank you, Jordan. Now let's switch to rule-based forms. The essence of rule-based form implementation in Sitefinity 12 is that basically you can augment a form with a set of rules that will introduce conditional behavior based on what is entered in the form. Rule extensions are available for MVC forms only, as we're now focusing on MVC. So all the really neat stuff will be coming in MVC technology. Now, these rules allow you to conditionally show specific form fields, skip pages in multi-page forms, and redirect user to certain pages based on their form entries. So overall, this gives you a lot of control to customize your customer's experience based on the context, what we call contextualizing the experience. So let's quickly see how this all works on a simple example. Here we have a feedback form which has the email field, a yes-no picker for the grade of overall experience, and a place for comments. Let's say we want to customize it so that we ask for a score from those folks who had a good experience. So we would use a multiple choice field for that purpose. Now it's important to remember to configure conditional form elements that use this way as hidden. Then the form rules editor will show them when the conditions match. So the comment field will be provided only to those folks who say they did not have a good experience. So we'll make this field hidden as well. Now let's add some rules. For the folks who said they had good experience, we're going to pick to show the multiple choice widget and then direct the user to the appropriate thank you page. Now for the other case, we will show the comment box and after that direct the users to a different place. Now let's publish this and see what the updated form looks like. And when you select yes in the drop-down, you will see the rating. And for the answer no, you get the comment box. So the users, if they select no, will put in their text and submit your input. So that's the rule-based forms functionality in a nutshell. The brilliant thing, of course, is that all the customizations to these forms are done without writing a single line of code. With that, let me introduce Lily Mesechkova, who is our engineering leader for Sitefinity. Lily, please take the stage with the update on Sitefinity performance enhancements.
Thank you, Sergey. Now I'm going to talk about smart caching and what are the performance updates we have with Sitefinity 12. One of the most interesting improvements that we have delivered is the ability for websites to handle really heavy user load together with frequent page editing in the backend. So this capability is actually a deferred cached invalidation together with integrated warmup. And let's go into more details and see an illustration of how the system used to work prior version 12. So on the slide, you see 6 different users and 6 different pages which are sharing one and the same page template. So I have chosen just 6 for illustration, but you can imagine what the scale would be with thousands of pages and hundreds of thousands of users. So what happens when a user comes and applies some changes in the page template and publishes those changes? The template gets persisted, and at that point of time, all the pages that have been previously cached into the output cache, they get invalidated. So you can imagine on a website being under heavy load, the system gets really busy to compile at the same time all the pages that the users are requesting. In this scenario, that can lead to system down. So let's see now what is the workflow that you can configure for your system with version 12. We have exactly the same setup with 6 different users and 6 different pages, again sharing the same page template. So the user applies some changes to the page template and persists those changes into the database. At that point, a background process is started and this is proactively warming up each page and is proactively replacing the new version of the page with the old version in the output cache. So for the certain period of time, it is possible that some users get some pages with the old version of the page template, and in the same time, some other users receive different pages with the new version of the page template. And that lasts only for the period until the background process completes. But with this improvement, the system can now handle many requests for page compilations and handle at the same time many requests for pages from many users. So with that, I'm going to transition to my next topic, and this is about geo-replication and multi-regional deployment of websites. With Sitefinity 12, we can enable websites to be geo-distributed and handle really big load and quick page speed to many users all over the globe. So the first thing that you need to consider when you want to go globally is integration with CDN. Sitefinity provides capability to integrate static resources with CDN like JavaScript files, CSS files, and images, but it also provides capability to cache media content and pages that are persisted in the CMS. And that's a solution that works only for pages that have no variations like personalization or A/B testing or some variations by user permissions. So if you are in a case that you need to provide those capabilities on your website, then you need to consider the multi-regional setup for Sitefinity that comes with version 12. As I already mentioned, this scenario is here to cover personalization, A/B testing, and some permissions that can impact what content can be displayed on the website and to different users. So let's see on a high level what this setup looks like. On the slide, you see 3 different regions, Europe, US, and Australia. The European region is the primary region where the content editing is allowed. In the secondary regions, only website is served to the front-end users. So you will see 3 different instances hosted in the 3 regions. As I already mentioned, just the first instance allows content editing. The others 2 are there just to serve front-end page requests. You will also notice that we have 3 different content databases in the 3 regions. The first one in the primary region allows read and write operations, and the databases in the secondary regions allow only read operations. And those 3 databases are configured in geo-replication. You will also see that in each region there is a lightweight database, much smaller than the content database, which is there only to collect some system statistics. It allows read and write operations, and they are not in sync across regions. They are not configured in geo-replication. You will also see on the slide that there is a Redis cache, which is there to synchronize the instances between different regions and send them different messages. So let's take a look at the workflow when a user updates a news, for example, from the primary region. At that point, once the news is persisted to the database, the data gets replicated to the other 2 databases in the secondary regions via the background geo-replication process. Also, the instance which has initiated the news update also sends a Redis cache notification, and that message gets delivered to the other 2 instances, which on their side invalidate their cache and reflect the geo-replicated data. So this is on a high level, the setup for geo-replication when there is no user input on your website. It's just serving content to the end user. So let's see what are the configurations that need to be done to apply this setup. The first thing that needs to be considered is to set up the Sitefinity configurations to be in auto and read-only storage mode, and you can do that from the web config. The second piece that you need to do is to configure the connection strings in each Sitefinity instance to operate with the database in the same region. And the third piece is to ensure that all the providers that are collecting some system information are configured to work with the local session database. The second portion of configuration that you need to consider is to configure the Redis cache system. You can do that in the system config, and you need to do that for the primary region and for the secondary regions as well. You need to disable the image resizing functionality for the second regions, and you can do so from the libraries config. That operation basically requires database persistence, and this is not allowed in the secondary regions. That's why it should be disabled for those regions. And the third piece is that you need to make sure that all values are exactly the same across all regions, all values for authentication parameters and encryption keys. So the next scenario that we're gonna take a look at is the scenario where your website needs to collect some user input on the front end, like user registration for submission, or for example, some custom module that is persisting some data. So the setup looks pretty much the same. We have the three regions, one of them being primary, the European one, and the other two secondary regions. And we also have the three instances, the Redis cache, and then the databases configured in data replication. So let's now imagine that there is a user in US who is submitting a form. This request is redirected to the nearest location. In this case, it's the Sitefinity instance located in US. And that instance persists the data in the master database in the primary region. And that's because the database in the US region is read-only. So what happens after that? Again, the background process is replicating the data to the secondary regions. And then we have a message sent from this instance hosted in US, a message sent to the Redis cache and delivered to the other regions. And at that point, these regions invalidate their cache and reflect the data that has been replicated. So what are the configurations that need to be done to enable that setup? First thing to consider is to add additional connection string into the secondary regions. That connection string to link to the master database in the primary region. So in that way, the master database can be shared between the primary and secondary region. And then the other things that need to be configured is all providers that need to persist some data in the master database to be configured to use the specified connection string. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Buyan. Buyan, over to you.
Thanks, Lily. Another really cool thing that we're introducing with version 12 of Sitefinity CMS is the modular architecture and packages. So in a nutshell, what's this and why we're really doing it? Well, by default, the Sitefinity CMS installation comes with all modules included. So depending on your use case scenario, you might be utilizing only certain Sitefinity modules. In such cases, the recommended approach for Sitefinity CMS projects running on versions prior to 12 was to disable the modules that are not used. This way, their precompiled logic remains in the project bin folder and gets loaded by the AIS application pull process. But the module's initialization logic is not executed every time the Sitefinity application starts. What we're doing with version 12 is that we're introducing an advanced mechanism for handling such scenarios by decoupling the system modules. This way, you can selectively install only the necessary modules and optimize your website startup time and application pool memory consumption. So in a nutshell, the benefits of this approach are your IIS worker process memory size decreases because you're not loading all the modules pre-compiled logic in the bin folder, but only the ones that you're using, which also results in faster website startup speed. And moving forward, this would enable us to do a separate release cycle for certain modules. What we've really done is we're introducing one new package, which is called Progress Sitefinity and contains only the core modules. So think of it as only the core logic that is required for you to run your Sitefinity website, but it excludes some modules which you can later add as NuGet packages. For example, the connectors, like we have a new NuGet package for each module, like the Salesforce connector. You can just go ahead and download it as a NuGet package and add it. And we're still keeping the Sitefinity O package, which contains all modules and nothing changes there. In addition for that, we're also introducing an API for self-installable modules, which is going to help developers produce modules which get really easily installed just by dropping them in the bin folder or exposing them as a NuGet package. As we're talking about new versions, let's take some time and speak a little bit about upgrades and breaking changes. These two often go side by side, and who doesn't love dealing with them? We keep a close dialogue with our customers and understand that upgrading a website can sometimes be a complex process that's often approached with concerns. That's why we've decided to spend some time today talking about the various resources we have available on the topic. First off, why exactly is upgrade a complex process? Well, when you perform an upgrade, under the hood system logic is getting replaced, often introducing new dependencies, changing project references, updating configuration files. And all that has to work equally well on both smaller sites using mostly out-of-the-box functionality and heavily customized ones. Knowing that, we've been working intensively on improving the upgrade experience of your Sitefinity CMS websites for the past couple of releases. Here are the areas we've been focusing on to make your lives easier. First off, testing. Prior to release being shipped, we do thorough testing, upgrading a number of internal websites, as well as any big projects customers have agreed to let us use for the test purposes. This guarantees that we're not just upgrading a blank project and kind of missing any important things that might break, but we're really covering real-world scenarios and trying to be as close to the real experience as possible. Second, more frequent betas. I don't know if you've noticed, but recently we've been releasing 1 or 2 betas in between the releases, which enables you to move on to the new version earlier and spot and report any problems so that we can address them prior to release date, which makes both you and us feel more comfortable about releasing the official upgrade. Avoiding breaking changes. Historically, we've been trying to make breaking changes only when necessary. Not only that, but we try to achieve the best balance between offering really customizable CMS and not making any public API if there is really no use case for it. So a couple of things that we're doing there is anytime we release a public API, it's usually accompanied by a sample. We also have automation tools that detect any changes to the public API, and we make sure that all of them are documented. Speaking of documenting breaking changes, we've iteratively changed the way we collect, document, and present this data. So that's one of the really cool things that we started from version 11 and is continuing on with version 12. As I mentioned earlier, it all begins with changes detected and documented internally by the development team in close collaboration with the technical writers. And then we review them, make the change easier to understand by customers, and support it with any examples necessary. And like I said, as of version 11, one of the things that we've really changed is you no longer have to go through separate changes, through separate pages, to read about the changes that come with each version. We've combined them all the information on one page, and we've kind of built this really neat user interface that allows you to define your upgrade path so that you can selectively say, okay, I'm upgrading from version 7 to version 11 and read only the information that's relevant. I'm going to demo that really quickly so you get an idea of what it looks like if you haven't seen it already. So here's our Sitefinity documentation. All right, and there's our API changes in Sitefinity CMS page. So let's say I'm upgrading from version 10, and I want to move over to the latest version, which is 12. well, this page is going to give me all the information that I'm interested for the respective versions that I've selected. Not only that, but from version 11.2, we've also introduced a better way of presenting the API changes, which, as you can see, are now in this very convenient table-like format, which enables you to filter down by the type of change. So you can see not only removed API that's considered as breaking change, but also new API that's added, or by default, you're seeing all changes. And you can also filter by different assembly, namespace, and type of member, which enables you basically to find much more easier whether the API that you're already using in your project has changed in the new version, so that you can respectively adjust it. Same goes for database changes. We've introduced the similar UI there as well. I've intentionally put QR codes and links there, so you can keep these as a reference in case you want to check them later. And continuing with our efforts to make upgrade more easy, we've basically recently produced upgrade best practices white paper, which was the team here just gathered all of our knowledge on upgrades and our experience dealing with upgrading customers' project and helping them go through the process. And in a nutshell, we're trying in this document to outline and make you understand better how upgrade works. So we're sharing some knowledge of what happens under the hood when the Sitefinity CMS upgrades, how to prepare better for the upgrade, what happens during the actual upgrade process, and sharing some post-upgrade tips and tricks. The upgrade white paper is accessible from the Sitefinity documentation, and it's also posted on the Sitefinity CMS website. We've shared a link and a QR code in the presentation as well for you to access it. One useful tip on upgrading: the officially recommended approach for upgrading Sitefinity CMS projects as a few versions back is NuGet packages. We do understand that for some of you, project manager might still be the upgrade mechanism of choice, but just a few words about upgrading with NuGet packages. If you can use that option, just because it makes things much easier for you. First off, it's shareable across the entire solution. So if you have multiple projects in your solution, once you upgrade with NuGet packages, all of them get their references updated at the same time, and you can avoid assembly version mismatch post-upgrade, which is one of the most common problems we've encountered. Similar to the project manager, it can also adjust your web config and project preferences automatically, so you shouldn't take care of that. And this removes a huge burden off your plate. And last but not least, it's really easy to automate. For example, if you want to do a CI/CD workflow process. With that, I'm passing over to Peter, who's going to provide a marketplace update.
Hey, thank you, Bojan. So about the marketplace, the first thing, the marketplace is alive. Yay! So marketplace is on and you can actually have exposure on it. I'm sure that many of you have some small or bigger implementations that can find place on our new marketplace. So with it, you'll be able actually to share those solutions with the community or even sell them to potential customers or partners. So let me give you some examples here. Your company has implemented a connector, let's say for marketing automation system X, and it's used in a solution, but it seems that this could be actually reused by another partner or customer, and actually it's not supported out of the box from Sitefinity. So this actually goes right away as a potential fit for the marketplace. You can submit it, and after this it will be evaluated by our team and it will be exposed on it. Just to clarify, the marketplace, the main idea actually, it will be to connect customers and partners, and it's not going to be like a shopping cart. So we're not going to charge anything on it. The idea actually is to propose to give you visibility on it and put you in touch with customers that are looking for that kind of solutions. So there are two types of implementations that could be actually submitted on the marketplace. The first one is integrations. Think of them like a big connectors between Sitefinity and external systems like MailChimp, HubSpot, or let's say a digital asset management system. In general, something big that is going to have impact to the customer experience and is missing from out-of-the-box features from Sitefinity. On the other hand, the add-ons could be actually considered as smaller samples that live in GitHub or any other open source repositories, and developers can download it, tweak them, and play with them. There are many reasons actually why you should submit an integration or an add-on, but keep in mind the following. By providing something unique to the customers, you can scale this solution across the whole Sitefinity customer base. And also, being close to developers and exchanging samples always pays off. Developers love to share and being actually recognized by the community. This also builds your credibility in front of customers. So I think those all those reasons are valid. And let me give you now a few angles from which you can actually look how to start developing those kind of integrations or add-ons. So let me walk you through a few extensibility points into Sitefinity. The first one, I think, connectors to external systems. Think about marketing automation, like a specific HubSpot connector or a connector to digital asset management system. This is something that is missing into Sitefinity, and I think this is a great fit. Actually, if you guys decide to go this path and provide that kind of connector. Also, utility tools. Developers actually love to have something handy, and let's say if you want actually to track what's going on with the health checks, you can provide UI format. Another point about the customization of the new backend, which Jordan showed a few minutes ago. So, custom widgets. I'm sure that all of you have suite with widgets that can be reused and that can be shared. Machine translation connectors. We provided an API. This is something that we support. So there are many angles from which you can see Sitefinity extensibility points, and you can start developing add-ons or implementation. So take your time. Go on the marketplace webpage, submit your idea, or if you already have something, and we'll keep in touch with you and see how we can actually help you to have visibility on our new marketplace. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We are flooded with questions, which is a good thing. Let me start with a couple of general ones. There was a question, is this all available only in version 12, or are some of the features included in 11.2? The only feature that we actually released in 11.2 but didn't promote and actually gated was geo-replication, multi-regional deployment. This is available out of the box with version 12. Everything else that we presented is only in version 12 and not before. So hopefully you will find that enough of a reason to upgrade to our latest version. Next question. Are there any specifics to be aware of when upgrading from Sitefinity 11 to 12? So I think that deals with some specific versions. I'll address that to Bojan, even though I think he did an excellent job covering the details and guidance for upgrades. Bojan, could you offer anything else for Sitefinity 11 to 12 migration?
Thank you, Sergey. Yes, sure. So in a nutshell, like we mentioned during the presentation, we're making an effort to reduce the number of breaking changes, and this is really valid for the upgrade path from version 11 to 12. In a nutshell, there are no significant database or architectural changes, thus upgrading from version 11 should be quite easy. Of course, first off, like any other version upgrade, you must do your due diligence. For example, make sure your pre-upgrade project works fine. Make a copy of the project files and database, ensure you're not upgrading the live project. I mean, all of these tiny details that really make a difference. Then carefully review the API and database changes for any breaking changes that can affect your custom code. We have a dedicated page in the documentation that will show the changes. Additionally, follow the best practices as per the Sitefinity documentation and upgrade white paper, as we mentioned. And finally, as far as version 12 is concerned, we are introducing a .NET version upgrade. So the target framework is now 4.72 compared to 11x, which was 4.71. Thus, you must manually change your project's target framework to 4.72 in Visual Studio and then perform the upgrade. We are modifying the web config automatically if you use NuGet, of course, and when you use Project Manager, it also prompts you whether you want to do that. So there you're covered. Furthermore, stemming from the .NET version change, if you're using NuGet to manage your project references, as a version 12, projects can be open with Visual Studio 2015, but can be built only using Visual Studio 2017. This is due to a limitation of the NuGet manager in Visual Studio 2015. Thus, some of the NuGet packages that we referenced in 12.0 cannot be installed if you use Visual Studio 2015 or lower. That's why you need to plan a Visual Studio version upgrade. Basically, that's what comes on the top of my mind.
Thank you. I think this will be a question for Lily. Are there any updates to inline editing with all the MVC changes that we did for version 12?
Thank you, Sergey. Inline editing was an area that was not part of our focus lately. I just want to give some details around how inline editing works, and that it basically disables the output cache for the editors so that they can see the changes that they have applied. And that's the reason for editors seeing different page response time from other users who are not authenticated on the system. So that's a detail that I wanted to provide. And for projects that are created on version 12, the inline editing is disabled by default, so that users who do not want to use it are not impacted of this behavior. But if you want to continue using it, you can just enable that from the configuration.
Thank you, Lily. The next one will be to Jordan. I'm going to generalize a little bit because there were a couple of questions in that area. How is it best to implement personalization with MVC widgets? I think we have several scenarios, built-in widgets, widget extensions, custom widgets. So are there general kind of points of guidance here?
Custom widgets is definitely an option, and I think using the Visual Studio extension and the CLI under the hood that generates widget templates for the developer comes with the recent version with the pre-built template for exactly making the personalization widget out of the box. And generally, I believe when you develop a widget, no matter if the user requirement right now is to personalize, you have to make it personalizable and think about personalization, because we're seeing quite a big interest in personalization, and it's driving sales up and engagement with the sites up. So definitely when you create a custom widgets or think about personalization. Does this answer the question?
I think so. Well, if not, then we can always follow up on forums or with a blog. Okay, there was a question, I believe, related to my summary of version 12. Wanted to confirm that SiteSync is only available to Sitefinity Professional license. Well, yes and no. I don't know what the edition is that the guest who asked the question has, but SiteSync is available for professional online marketing and enterprise. It's included in enterprise, and it's extra cost for the other two. All right, so there are some questions regarding geo-distribution, cache warm-up, and that whole segment that Lily covered on performance. First question, how long does it typically take for the new pages to warm up? Lily, if you could do a brief on that.
Yeah, the answer is it really depends, because the time for a page to load depends on the database calls from the page to the database. So it can really vary based on the widgets that you have on the page. I don't have a common answer to that question.
With the new cache warm-up options, can we basically hide that factor altogether?
Well, when we talk about restart of the system, sure. If we have the information in the distributed cache, we don't have to pay that extra time for the page to load.
Okay, thank you. On geo-distribution and cache, does the cache module there that you talked about replace the current load balancing setup that takes care of cache invalidation?
Thank you, Sergey. I got a little bit confused about the question, so I would answer it that way. If the question refers to the cache invalidation with proactive warm-up, the answer here is it doesn't replace the load balancing invalidation mechanism. It's an addition to that. And if the question refers to the multi-regional Redis cache synchronization, again, the answer there is that this is additional mechanism and it can work together with NLB synchronization per region.
Okay. All right, there were a few questions that were added while we were answering, so I'm reading that. All right, that one is an easy one. What's the URL for the Sitefinity marketplace? progress.com/sitefinity-cms/marketplace. Everybody is invited. Question for Lily, and actually I don't know to what extent we've verified that. Is version 12 certified to work on Windows Server 2019?
I don't think we have checked that. I'll definitely need to get more information and come back.
I know we're working on support for Visual Studio 2019 for second half of the year, right? So we'll need to add that. Actually, we are somehow at the very end of the questions. There were a couple that I think we need to answer directly to the folks who asked because they're pretty specific. Thank you very much for attending. It was actually a big crowd. We were very happy to see a high count of attendees. Please stay tuned for our new releases and the update webinars for those.